Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to update you on the systems being used.
Thank you, Chair. Rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedural rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. Voting. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? I'm not seeing any, so I will now hand back to the chair.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks very much. So once again, welcome to our budget meeting. Apropos of nothing at all, I will just mention that today is also National Carpe Diem Day. So seize the day or be bold, as I think we were told to be in our peer review a few years ago. For anyone with a slightly different take on this, it is also, and I kid you not, National Tell a Fairy Tale Story Day. So you can, so take your pick which one you want to follow. We are obviously going to debate the budget, and I'm reminded of a quote from President Harry S. Truman, actually, who said, "It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit." I'll just throw that into the equation. Yes. Right. Apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Stephen Patmore and Claire Strong. Are there any further apologies? Matt?
Councillor Collins, Councillor Griffiths and Councillor Jarvis.
Collins, Griffiths and Jarvis. Okay. That's it. Right. Thank you. We're on item 2, the minutes of the meeting on the 29th of January 2026. At this point, I'm going to ask the leader, Councillor Val Bryant, to just provide an update on the Herts Links motion, which was requested during the meeting that we last had. Val.
Thank you. Just to say that very recently we received reply from the Cabinet member at the County Council, and I'll be passing that to Councillor Munser, who proposed it, and to Councillor Brown as leader of Lib Dems. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meetings of full council held on the 29th of January. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Val Bryant, thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you. I'm not necessarily going to a formal vote. Are you all in favour? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Right, notification of other business. We've not received notification of any other business. None's been advised. So we're going to the Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, the meeting is recorded. The recordings will be available on both the Council's YouTube page as well as the Council's ModGov site, alongside the documentation from the meeting. The climate emergency and ecological emergency, members are reminded that this Council has declared both a climate emergency and an ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that as these are emergencies, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. A detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Rules of debate. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. No speeches may be made after the mover has moved a motion and explained the purpose of it until the motion has been seconded. When seconding a motion or amendment, a member may reserve their speech until later in the debate. In accordance with the Constitution, please can members ensure that no speech exceeds 3 minutes without the consent of the Chair. Comfort break for purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. There will be a comfort break at an appropriate time in the meeting should proceedings continue at length. I think you can safely be assured there will be a comfort break then. Outside bodies survey. I'm asked to remind you the annual outside bodies review is currently underway, with councillors and organisations having been sent a survey to complete. If you have not yet done so, please complete the survey for each organisation to which you have been appointed by North Arts Council, and the deadline is tomorrow, Friday the 27th of February. So those of you who haven't done it can burn some midnight oil tonight if you like. Following this, the committee services team will be contacting councillors and organisations who have not responded by phone to complete the survey. If you have any questions, please contact committee services. And finally, it's with great sadness that I announce that former councillor Jean Andrews, a member of the Labour group and Letchworth South East Ward councillor, passed away recently. Our thoughts are with Jean's family and friends at this sad and difficult time. Jean served as a district councillor from May 1996 to May 2000 and served on several committees as a committee member, such as the Environment Committee and Joint Staff Consultative Committee, and as the chair of the Electoral Review Working Party and Public Affairs Subcommittee. Thoughts with the family. Okay, we've not been notified of any public participation for this evening, so we go on to item 6, items referred from other committees. 6A, the referral from Cabinet on Budget 26-27 to be taken with agenda item 8, and 6B, the referral from Cabinet on the investment strategy to be taken with agenda item 9. Takes you to item number 7, the pay policy statement 26-27. Ian Cooper to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're required to approve a pay policy statement each year prior to the 31st of March, which is why it's being brought to this meeting tonight. The pay policy statement is for the year coming, so for 26-27. As is the case in most years, the pay award for that was applied from April 26 has not yet been agreed. Therefore, there is a provision in the recommendations that this is amended when that is agreed. So the pay amounts in here reflect the current pay amounts at this stage. The format is as prescribed, as we're required to have all the details as per the legislation. We have added in for this year at paragraph 7.1 a brief element in there about recruitment and retention payments, just for transparency. This is not a new thing. These have been around for they've always been existing and been around, but just because it have been included in the past, if transparency they're included this time. In relation to multiples, they have come down slightly as pay awards are generally being bottom loaded in terms of higher increases for the lower paid staff. That's been the ratios down slightly each year. But in terms of the content, that's all as per normal and as in previous years.
Any questions or comments? I'm seeing none. So the recommendation that Council approves the 26-27 pay policy statement attached to Appendix 1 and 2.2 that Council delegates authority for revisions made in year to the pay policy statement to the Director Resources in consultation with the Executive Member. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ian Albert, thank you very much. And a seconder. Councillor Val Bryant, thank you, Val. Any debate on that? Then we'll go straight to the vote.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Robbie. Right, to the meat of the evening. This is item 8, budget 26-27 revenue and capital budgets. I have agreed an extension of speaking time for Councillor Ian Albert of up to 20 minutes. and up to 10 minutes for Councillor Ralph Munser. I have not agreed for any other members to speak for longer than the 3-minute time limit. Prior to 1997, Chancellor of the Exchequer were given dispensation on budget day to take alcohol into the chamber. And so at the dispatch box, you would have seen Ken Clarke with his Scotch and water, Geoffrey Howe with his G&T, Churchill Disraeli with brandy, Gateskill and Daunton with rum. Since 1997, the beverage of choice has been mineral water, which some wags have suggested explains the gradual decline of the economy. But here, without any need of alcoholic stimulation, I welcome our very own Chancellor. But before, who's promised to keep his speech shorter than Donald Trump's State of the Nation. But in the first instance, I'm going to call on the Leader of the Council, Val Bryant, to just introduce the budget.
Thank you. This evening, the Council has a duty to set a budget for the forthcoming year. We're doing that in the context of a financial settlement that is better than what we thought might be coming our way. This gives us a chance to invest some of our reserves in the district. We are clear that we will do that in a way that delivers value for money and is aligned with our vision to work with you for a fairer, greener North Herts. We thought that the funding we received from the government would be reduced substantially, so we're ready to prudently manage our budget to achieve that. We had carried out a budget consultation. I'd like to thank the more than 500 people who responded. We were ready to make the difficult decisions. Our budget position, including government funding, reductions to pension costs and other funding, means we are looking forward to able to build a learner pool in Royston, for instance, and many other items which Councillor Albert will expand on. While I'd love to ease the burden of our residents by not increasing our district council element of our council tax, the reality is that just plainly is not viable. We want to be a council that delivers the services that our residents value and is sustainable in the medium term. And we want to hand over to a new unitary council in 2028 with a positive legacy that enables them to set a balanced budget. So we must propose that the council tax element of this council is increased by that basis, which is in line with the medium-term financial strategy. That is 2.99%, around 15 pence per week for a Band D property, with the increases in other bands pro rata to that. With the increases proposed by both the County Council and Police and Crime Commissioner, it actually means that our share of the overall bill continues to go down, and it is now lower than the PCC. We will continue to have a working age council tax reduction scheme that means our poorest households do not pay any council tax, and will continue to apply the government scheme for pension-aged people. I would like now to ask Councillor Albert to expand on our proposed budget.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the small number of extra minutes. It's Dancing Pandas this evening on my title. My partner Jan loves pandas, but as many of you know, Jan is Paul Clarke's widow, and I think it's very important I need to remember the contribution of past colleagues. Paul, particularly a good friend and colleague, a Liberal Democrat, but a really good friend and colleague, and of course on our side, our wonderful and much missed Gary Grindle and Judy Billing, who's for their support and advice over so many years. You will see that we've changed again how we present this budget to you. The overall content's still the same, but we've combined the revenue and capital budgets paper and separated out the investment strategy. This keeps the decisions on how we spend our money sitting within a single report. The more technical matters around our treasury investments are in the next paper to council. And indeed, obviously, it also helps my Liberal Democrat colleague, Councillor Ward, to fully participate on this item as he declares an interest on the next paper due to his work commitments. And well, really, I'm very happy to do that. At the end of both, we have the report to formally set council tax for the next year, which is a statutory requirement that incorporates the decision on council tax made by us, the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner. I'd like to thank Ian Cooper and all his team for their work on getting us to this stage. We're very lucky to have such a skilled team at this council. This is the second year and second budget of the Labour administration in North Herts. It's been a year which has certainly not been uneventful, a year which has had its moments. We've had 2 council leaders, and unhesitatingly, I'd like to thank Councillor Daniel Allen for all his hard work over the last 21 months. And now my Bearton Ward colleague, Councillor Val Bryant, as Deputy Leader, now Leader of the Council. Congratulations, Val. Indeed, I'm pleased to say we've even gained a third leader on this council in Councillor Steve Jarvis, who I think is not with us this evening, Leader of the County Council, and well done, Steve, for that. Now, we've reported on the progress being made to deliver our council plan for a fairer and greener North Herts. We've received positive feedback from the Corporate Peer Challenge. We've got on with the hard graft of local government reorganisation, and whatever your view of the outcome, it was a huge victory to get 550-page document agreed by 11 different councils and the police commissioner, and North Herts Council played a leading part. We're making great progress on the £20 million programme to modernise and decarbonise our leisure centres and the Town Hall Museum site. We're developing the plans for the new museum storage facility in Letchworth and for how we engage with community volunteers to help index and rebox our collection. And I know I can remember the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Winchester, expressed a desire already to be involved in that outreach work. That's very welcome. We have the next meeting of the Churchgate Board tomorrow. Members will have seen the update the other week in the MIS. And this evening, as I say, we need to set a balanced budget for the medium term. We're able to do this with the knowledge that the Labour government has provided a provisional 3-year settlement to allow councils to plan for the future. Gone are the dark days of negative revenue support grants that were threatened to be introduced by the Conservative government that plagued our budget setting over the last 10 years. We need to set a budget in the context of local government reorganisation. That's why we're looking at a 3-year budget, as on current plans that will cover the remaining 2 years of North Herts Council and setting the foundations for the first year of a new unitary authority. But all the while, we'll also ensure that if North Herts is still here beyond 2028, we have the funds and capacity to manage the vital services provided by the council. And when we have the debate on Councillor Munson's amendment, I'll say some more about the damage that that amendment will do if it was carried. We faced uncertainty in getting to this point. Government set out to deliver a new funding formula that aimed to better reflect deprivation and addressing needs. We had some concerns how this could impact upon districts like North Herts. That's why last summer we undertook a public consultation, as Councillor Bryant said, to get residents' view on our spending priorities. I'd like to thank all those responded, as Councillor Bryant has done, and I'll come on to later how we've considered that feedback in setting this budget. We did also consult with businesses on the business rates, but we haven't had any responses this year. In the end, both the provisional settlement and then the final settlement were positive for this district. It was welcome news for our residents. This was enhanced even more when, alongside the 3-year settlement, reductions in our required pension contributions and a projected increase in our extended producer responsibility funding removed the need for us to find a further £2.5 million of savings and income. The government measure a council's funding through the core spending power. This is made up of council tax, general grant, retained business rates and some specific grants. Our core spending power will increase by 4.3 next year, followed by expected rises of 2.3 and then 2.2%. That's the difference a Labour government can make to local authorities. And indeed, over and above that, and I think it's particularly topical today when we hear about homelessness, we've also gained additional homelessness funding as part of the settlement. So I'm not here tonight having to set out a series of budget cuts or consider how we would have to plan reductions to our services. Instead, as I'll come to later, I'm focusing on a prudent use of our reserves to enable investment in our district. But let me stress that is always in the context of an underlying medium-term balanced budget. And we'll get to balanced budgets when we come to Councillor Munson's amendment. We continue to engage all members in the budget process at an early stage through the budget workshops in November. Members will know through those workshops we've presented a number of proposals. Project management resource to support the regeneration of Churchgate, investment in economic development to help deliver our new strategy, vital for businesses and job creation. Investment in a community wellbeing officer to cover the lost grant funding. That post will support the delivery of social isolation projects and falls prevention, creative wellbeing for mental health and food poverty interventions district-wide. Creation of a new conservation assistant, permanent post within planning control. North Herts has more than 1,700 listed buildings and 400 conservation areas, and we need more capacity to help protect these important buildings. But we aren't just about spending. The investments in planning are funded from national fee increases. We're also invested in the jewel in our crown, Careline, by marketing to generate an increased income, but also meaning that even more people have access to the services, the fantastic services they provide. None of the political parties or independent represented on this council provided any disagreement with those proposals. Now, I spoke earlier about the budget survey. That survey deliberately focused on areas that cost us money. Of the top 4 items on the list, 2 related to waste collection and street cleaning. You'll all be aware of the service change in summer last year, which formed part of previous year's budgets. So less opportunity there. However, I do want to highlight, as Councillor Lucas will know from his county resources role, the positive impact that our waste service change is having on the county council's waste disposal costs. The increase in volume of recycling collected and associated decrease in residual waste collected with the resultant decreases in costs, all from the change to 3 weekly collections. And the county finance officers today have told me that in gross terms for East and North Herts, that is extra 1.2 million income. It will be a bit less than that because of other costs that have to be netted off, but that is a substantial change that is benefiting wider communities than just East and North Herts. The other 2 top areas from the budget survey were our green spaces and community safety. I've set out in the paper the additional funding we're providing in those areas. But now let me turn to the further proposals considered and agreed by Cabinet and then we bring for approval today. As a council, we can use our revenue funding towards capital spend, but not the other way around. Previously, that has simply not been feasible, as we've been looking forward, expecting the worst, and needing those revenue reserves to cushion the impact of significant funding cuts. Today, I'm setting out that prudent use of our reserves to deliver a value for money to North Herts and long-lasting improvements to the services we offer. Our reserves are in a healthy situation, and it's worth noting that most of the reserves being used are accumulated business rate gains, and our general fund reserves are maintained at a similar level. The plans we are looking to deliver include, and I think this will be welcome across this council chamber, the 4.75 million investment in a new learner pool at Royston Leisure Centre, significantly improving access to swimming lessons and water confidence for residents of all ages. I'm really excited about this project and hope we can all agree tonight we can finally make it happen. I set out last year the administration's commitment to the project. I always have to say then, we didn't accept the Liberal Democrat amendment to reduce the museum storage budget and set aside extra money for the learner pool. I said that was wrong at the time and we needed to do further feasibility work on the pool. If we agreed it then, we'd have only been able to build just over half a pool. But we've done the feasibility work now, provided a realistic estimate of costs, and now found a way to pay for it by a business case that stacks up and delivers a long-term return on our investment without undue risk. But that's the Labour way. But let me add, because I think it's important to take on board the spirit of what Councillor Hoskin said, let me add I'm grateful for the input of Royston Liberal Democrat colleagues like Councillor Barnes, Councillor Johnson and Councillor Brown on this issue. Indeed, I can remember having a discussion several years ago now with Councillor Jarvis, who was keen that we make sure that we did keep the Royston Learner Pool in our budgets at the time. So thank him as well. 200,000 extra investment in interactive water play at the North Herts Leisure Centre, creating more engaging and inclusive play spaces for our families. £200,000 capital investment in new digital and other signage to the car parks in Hitchin. Alongside the continuing work we're doing on Churchgate development, this project will provide residents and visitors with up-to-date information of parking spaces available in the town. This has been welcomed by the Hitchin Bid and local businesses. We've set aside around 295,000 investment in green spaces across the district. There's planting borders in Bancroft, Priory Memorial Gardens, Broadway Gardens in Letchworth, designed to enhance biodiversity. Repairs and improvements to footpaths at Walsworth Common and Ivell Springs, improving accessibility and safety. The creation of a habitat bank at Radburn Way to support wildlife and diversity. And indeed, the Great Ashby allotment. I'm sorry, Councillor Jarvis is not here because it's another Great Ashby proposal that I'm sure he could rush to claim on Facebook as his own. Yeah. And indeed, the Grange Recreation Ground feasibility work. There's increased funding for community safety projects and initiatives, with the ongoing community safety budget doubled from 10 to 20,000 to allow the council to deliver additional measures to reduce crime, tackle fly tipping and address antisocial behaviour. Proposed extra support for local organisations through 30,000 for community forums and just over 40,000 for net for our key partner organisations like Citizens Advice, North Herts Centre for Voluntary Service and North Herts Minority Ethnic Forum. A really important work they do. We're proposing £70,000 for Herts Futures in 26-27, subject to contributions from other districts and boroughs making that work viable. We've set money aside to support the delivery of local government reorganisation. It's a huge change project. We've set aside up to £2 million of reserve funding to support work on the transition itself and supporting our staff through the process. That includes ensuring we have the capacity to support the change and help our staff to get the training that they need to deliver now and when they form part of the new councils. Finally, I draw Council's attention to items R51 and 52 as discussed by Cabinet on page 55 of the report. In the interest of time, I won't go into detail, but we're happy to pick up questions around that. We do have to consider raising our fees and charges proportionately. We've already agreed on the new garden waste charge at £57. The new charge is still less than most neighbouring councils. Parking charges will be increasing by an overall 2% lower than inflation. Turning to risk management, it's critical that we consider in relation to the budget, there is always some uncertainty. For example, the 3-year settlement totals are provisional for years 2 and 3. The EPR funding is not guaranteed. I would draw Council's attention to Section 25 report from the Chief Finance Officer, Appendix D, starting on page 59. This provides an assessment of the various risks we face and how we'll keep an eye of them through our budget monitoring processes and when setting future budgets. An assessment of the risks has been compiled for the coming year based on those risks identified by each service director and cross-reference to the risk register. I'd like to thank the Finance Audit and Risk Committee, chaired by Councillor Sean Nolan and more recently by Councillor Pupila Singham, for their review of the budget process and assumptions in the budget. They provided helpful ideas on how we assess budget risks in relation to minimum general fund levels, which the Director of Resources will consider as part of next year's budget process. The committee were assured that we're still currently a long way above the recommended level of reserves. But we can't just rely on FAR. We should all consider the recommended minimum general fund balances set out in paragraphs 8.14 to 8.16. Overall, though, the Chief Finance Officer concludes, to quote, "I consider that the budget is proposed is based on robust estimates. I've highlighted where I feel there are elements of higher risk, but I'm satisfied that there are mechanisms in place to be able to respond to these if required. This is welcome assurance." Now, turning to council tax, where a council wants to deliver services, so we do have a need to raise council tax. We're also an administration that has a key priority of sustainability. As it's becoming normal practice, government will assume that we will increase council tax by the maximum allowed. This is just under 3% for our element of council tax. We want to be a council that delivers services to our residents, so we will increase council tax by the maximum allowed. That means for a Band D property, the 2.99% increase on that element is a penny over £8 per year, 15p per week. And as we're all aware, we also collect council tax on behalf of the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner. For a Band D, their annual increases are around £88 and £15 respectively. That means our share of the bill is further dropped to around 11.4% and is now lower than the Police and Crime Commissioner element. A 2.99% increase generates over £400,000 of extra funding versus a freeze in the rate of council tax. That loss carries on forever. There's no mechanism to recover foregone increases and actually increases over time due to the impact of inflation. After 5 years, the annual loss of funding, it reaches 475,000. The cumulative loss over that 5-year period would be 2.2 million, even larger on Councillor Munsah's proposals. There's simply no case to freeze or increase council tax by a lower amount if we're to maintain service levels. It would simply be irresponsible. But that's why our council tax reduction scheme is so important. The banded scheme will also continue to provide support to those who are most in need. On the January council meeting, we set how we would continue to support the lowest income households, and the Chief Financial Officer and I were delegated by council to review the bands, mostly in line with universal credit increases. We explained last time how we're working with Marie Curie on discretionary support residents who are terminally ill if they don't already receive 100% exemption. The recommendation, Chair 2.8, asks Council to bring forward the capital expenditure on pool covers to 25-26. This will allow this work to be done before the outdoor pool season begins. I urge Council to agree this. Recommendation 2.9 and paragraph 8.30 relate to second home premiums. That's the decision we took 2 years ago, and we were required to give at least a year's notice before implementing it. At the time, we considered the various implications and have made sure over the last 2 years that those affected know that it is being implemented. This recommendation confirms that it will commence from this April. The current estimate that the number of properties affected is 131 homes. But it's still right that we take action also to maximise the number of homes available in the district. So to conclude, a great and wise man recently said in another place that their budget was ambitious, affordable, and achievable. I couldn't put this better myself. Indeed, I did just 1 year ago. I'm proud of what this Labour administration is putting before Council today, but I think that this is a budget that I hope all parties can get behind and support. Let's show that this is a council that can rise above party politics and deliver for our communities. Chair, I move the recommendations contained in this report 2.1 to 2.9. Thank you.
And a minute to spare. Thank you, Ian. Okay, are there any questions on what's just been said before we? No. Okay. So Ian Albert has moved the recommendations 2.1 to 2.9, which you have on your paper. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sean Nolan.
Happy to second and reserve my right to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I understand that we have, well, I don't understand. I know we have received amendments from the Conservative group, which have been published as supplements to the agenda and have been provided in paper copy for members this evening. So I'm going to ask Ralph Munsah to. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to, we're going to discuss the amendments first before discussing the substantive motion that may or may not be amended. Is that correct? Thank you.
Claire?
Sorry, Chair, I did have a question, but I pressed the wrong button.
Oh, it's all right.
Can I ask it now?
Of course you can.
Thank you. Let me just check my notes. Thank you. So this was regarding item R52 for security. I have no objection at all to keeping council staff members and visitors safe. I'm very glad we have the opportunity to do so, but we do strive to create a welcoming and inclusive work environment. And I was a bit concerned that this line says nothing about how this security will be enacted. Could I please ask Councillor Albert for some context for the inclusion of this item and ask that further details of the proposed post should come to staff and members so everyone understands the role, responsibilities and escalation procedures? And can I ask for assurance that proper thought will take and consultation will take place to ensure that security procedures do not inhibit public attendance? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I'm going to pass that to Val Bryant.
I will try and answer your question. Councillor Manchester, the introduction of a door supervisor is following a request of both myself and Councillor Daniel Allen for various reasons, including the recent increase in hostile conduct from members of the public and threats to officers and to members. Due to the speed in which this has been arranged, these new arrangements have not been conveyed to members and will be in place for meetings to the end of the civic year. You'll have noticed as you enter the building this evening the introduction of a door supervisor as a result of these recent hostile conducts. The meeting tonight is the second meeting where security personnel have been present. They do not need to be present in a chamber, but close by, as it's not just officers and members who we have duties towards, but also members of the public that could be caught up in a situation that could escalate. They'll be present at the entrance prior to a meeting, ensuring those entering the building have a genuine reason to attend and to ensure that the public sign in. This is for fire regulation purposes, and therefore please do not be offended if as a member you are challenged as you enter the building to show your badge. It will greatly assist the individual if you can ensure that your council identity pass is clearly on display. For the larger meetings, the electric vehicles will be relocated from the rear car park so that these spaces may be used by staff and members. Security personnel will also be able to escort people if required to their vehicle. This should be seen as a positive precautionary measure to support the pressing concern facing those in public office of the increasing levels of intimidation, harassment and abuse they're experiencing, and the duty of care we owe to those who want to welcome to our meetings. As I said, this is only the second meeting where we've actually had a door supervisor, and I've been working with Mel Stimson to organise more, what's the word I'm looking for? Forgotten. To organise what's going to happen next year if and when this is actually passed on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, then we'll go to Ralph Muntzer then for the Conservative amendments.
Chairman, we find ourselves in an age of uncertainty. In Westminster, there are questions as to whether Keir Starmer will be removed from Downing Street before or after the local elections that Labour sought to cancel. And there is a great deal of uncertainty here in Hertfordshire because of the flawed approach to local government reorganisation promulgated by this lamentable and egregious government. But even in this age, some things never change, and I have to hand it to the Labour administration. They are nothing if not consistent, because every year they present a budget, much like their colleagues in Westminster, that raises council tax by the maximum allowed on hard-working people across our district. Unlike my Conservative colleagues over the border in East Cambridgeshire, who have managed to freeze their council tax over the last 13 years, Labour in North Herts have increased council tax by over 20% since they took office with the Lib Dems. But it's not just council tax increasing under Labour. It's the brown bin charge, parking charges, business rates, national insurance, stamp duty, capital gains, inheritance tax. The list goes on and on. In fact, as Rachel Reeves stood up to deliver her budget last year in the House of Commons, no doubt ably assisted by her parliamentary bag carrier, none other than our own Hitchin's own Labour MP, Alistair Strathern, there had been a tax rise once every 10 days since Labour came into office. And with Councillor Albert's budget tonight and the spring statement next week, this shameful record is only set to continue. It isn't just Labour, though, that are increasing taxes, because the Lib Dems are at it as well. Last week, we saw the leftist alliance at Hertfordshire County Council, led by the Liberal Democrat minority administration backed by Labour and the Greens, increasing their share of council tax without having a plan to get the basics right. Now, our Lib Dem colleagues haven't put forward any amendments to the Labour's budget tonight. And it does leave me to believe that either they're completely out of ideas or there is a quid pro quo, an agreement that if you don't cause us trouble at HCC, we won't cause you any trouble at NHDC. However, with taxes going up across the board, yet the quality of the service received going down, is it any wonder that people in North Herts feel that they are the servant of the state? Chairman, it doesn't have to be like this. Unlike Labour the Lib Dems and Reform, the Conservatives are the party of low tax. We are the party of ensuring that hard-working taxpayers get good value for money. That's why tonight we are doing something that is unthinkable to the parties and the opposition in this chamber and outside of it. We are not proposing the maintenance of the status quo of increasing council tax by the maximum that is allowed, meaning our residents pay more and get less. But the Conservatives are proposing to cut council tax this year and ensure it is frozen for the year after and until this authority is abolished. On top of this, we are proposing to deliver savings of over £1 million. Now, it is assumed that council tax is going to, in 2028 and 2029, is going to be the responsibility of the new unitary authorities. However, should government delay local government reorganisation in Hertfordshire, we are confident and would be prepared to make additional savings and efficiencies within this organisation. After all, we've been able to deliver these radical proposals without even scratching the surface of this council's proposed £27.5 million spend next year. And I will not, Councillor Albert says that these proposals are irresponsible. I will not take lectures from the Labour Party opposite, who sought to back a mode of local government reorganisation that would leave our residents worse off by having a council that was bankrupt from day one. But how are these measures going to be funded? Well, these measures will be paid for by reducing the proposals of the administration to increase staff headcount at this authority, the reprioritisation of council projects, and diverting money proposed to be spent on local government reorganisation back where it belongs, the pockets of our residents. It is Whitehall that has decided to take authorities across Hertfordshire down this disruptive and expensive road of local government reorganisation. And Chairman, it is Whitehall that should pay for it. The cost burden should not be placed on this authority or on hard-working people across North Hertfordshire. And just as an aside, if I made a mistake in business that cost and wasted millions of pounds, I would rightfully be sacked. And yet, despite costing taxpayers tens of millions of pounds, the architect of the family farms tax and the Secretary of State for Local Government, Steve Reed, still occupies his office in Marsham Street. Chairman, he should do the honourable thing and resign. And if not, the Prime Minister should have the courage to sack him. Now, my group and I wholly disagree with the need for an executive member for local government reorganisation. It is an unnecessary expense, and I say to Councillor Bryant, she, as the leader of this council, should be undertaking the responsibilities of this role. We have included the removal of this position within our budget proposals to support our savings measures and make it clear this is not something we would implement were we in administration. However, I do acknowledge that under current legislation, the composition of the Cabinet is indeed an executive function, and therefore I would urge Councillor Bryant to show restraint when trying to add to her payroll vote. In light of intelligence of which I have not been privy to until this meeting, I am also going to be withdrawing the Conservative amendments to cut R52 with reference to member security. It is absolutely vital that members and officers are able to go about their daily business unharmed, and in light of that intelligence, I am happy to withdraw that. Chairman, I do wish to speak to two additional proposals of which have been made by the Conservatives. The first is a rural parking enforcement officer. Now, something that is raised with me quite frequently on the doorstep in Codicott and in Kimpton is parking issues, including parking on Codicott High Street. And this is something that I know impacts communities across North Herts and including the ones that my colleagues represent. That is why we are allocating funding for a rural parking enforcement officer to ensure that in our rural communities, parking restrictions are enforced and that residents' concerns are addressed and alleviated. Of course, this proposal would see some part funding through the increase in the amount of penalty charge notices of which are issued by those officers. I also want to talk to an important project, and that is the Royston Learner Pool. Royston, as we know, is an isolated community is an isolated town in North Hertfordshire, and the Conservatives have always taken the position that we support the proposal in principle, but of course it is vital that the business case stacks up. Now, I'm very pleased that officers have worked to ensure that the business case does indeed stack up, and we are wholeheartedly in support of this proposal, which will provide a vital service to people in Royston and encourage healthier lives. But of course, we will, of course, ensure that this proposal and any spending related to it is consistently scrutinised and monitored to ensure that the proposal does not costs do not spiral, because that would not be something which is in the best interest of residents in North Hertfordshire. I just want to also, before I conclude, just touch upon Churchgate, because yet again, we seem to be of the view that we are able to write a blank cheque for Churchgate. Members haven't been informed, nor has the public, of the potential costs of this project. Now, I would estimate that this project is going to cost in the tens of millions of pounds, and yet it would be irresponsible of this administration to pay for such a project through borrowing and borrowing alone. We need to make sure that as an authority, we have a far more sustainable position, and that we are boosting and building our resilience in order to deliver this project, if indeed it is viable, both financially and within the constraints of construction. Chairman, I want to conclude. The Conservatives want the state to be servant and not master. The parties opposite want us to be slaves of the state. The Conservatives are willing to take the difficult and necessary decisions. The parties opposite aren't. The Conservatives want our residents to keep more of their own money. But yet again, they want to put their hand in our residents' pockets. Chairman, whilst Labour and the Lib Dems maintain the status quo for residents here in North Herts, paying more and getting less, the Conservatives are proposing a different way, a better way, a way that rewards work through cutting tax and delivers for hard-working people across our communities. And I would commend this budget to the Chamber.
Gosh, it would be flippant of me to say I wish you'd been Conservative leader for the 25 years that you were in power, but there we are. Right, unsurprisingly, lots of people wish to ask questions, but before we do that, I assume, Ralph, that you are proposing your various amendments on block, with the exception of the removal of R51 and R52.
That is indeed correct, Chair.
Okay.
I haven't been told I'm able to do anything other than that.
Can I have a seconder, please? David? Yeah?
Absolutely.
David Barnard, second.
Reserve my right, please.
Thank you very much. Okay. I was going to say, were there any questions on that? But I think that's all going to come out in the debate. So I will go now to Ian Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. I mean, at the County Council meeting, I described Ralph as like one of the sons of the aging Roman Emperor Vespasian, Titus and Domitian. But for those who know these things, I saw it as marginally more sensible one, Titus. But now, having read this amendment, he's actually much more like Domitian, who just wanted to wreck and destroy things. I feel I've entered a parallel universe. You can say one thing in a meeting and say and vote completely the reverse in another place and hope people won't notice. Will we have? The Tories have a record on that. Ralph talks about that we're nothing but consistent. Well, yes, you're nothing but inconsistent. You talk about the Liberal Democrats didn't put in an amendment. Well, you didn't put any amendments in when you spoke at the County Council. Not a single one on a £1.2 billion budget. You spoke there about favouring a council tax freeze or reduced increase, but you didn't put down an amendment to actually say what you would cut, or even put down an amendment so it could be debated. This is a financially illiterate, financially irresponsible amendment and doesn't even balance our budget's medium term, which my budget does and more. It should be voted down. It's just designed so that Ralph can pose outside to tell how he tried to reduce their council tax bills in North Herts and Labour opposed it. Well, I'm unashamedly proud to oppose this. And unlike his last early walkout from a council chamber, he doesn't even get the first pick of the sandwiches. We don't have that hospitality here. Ralph will never tell you how we tried to prevent the vital services we need from improving, or how we stopped the council from improving the assets we own, like our parks and gardens. He won't say why he didn't oppose the increase of 5.6%, £15 a year, sought by the police commissioner. Why? Because he's a Tory. But does he oppose the North Herts increase now of 2.99%? This is just opposition for the sake of clipology on YouTube and Facebook. Ralph even looks for CCTV cameras on our high streets to stare into and make a speech. Now what will Ralph's warm words deliver our residents in council tax savings? The North Herts share is 11.4%. He wants to reduce council tax bills by £10 a year, 19p a week. It's just enough to buy one concession ticket at Hitchin Town Football Club. Not that he ever goes there. Now, of course, I agree we should only spend money when it's right to do so. We must never be profligate. But then late this afternoon, Ralph produces an amendment that would wreck our council's finances, and actually, over a 3-year period, we would lose £2.5 million. So I would urge colleagues to reject this amendment. Reject the fact he never actually came and to make any of these proposals at any of our workshops. He wants to remove £2 million from our reserve for local government reorganisation. Well, Broxbourne Council have put £1 million in. Now, I hope we won't spend it all, but I have to say, if you actually want us to do local organisation properly, we need that fund. Reject this motion, and even you don't believe it, Ralph.
And next up, we have Alistair Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair. Every year, it seems we need to remind the leader of the Conservative group of the same thing. Cuts leave our communities worse off. Residents don't want a load of politicians eagerly chasing headlines with empty slogans. Perhaps Ralph's slogan should actually be, talk more, say less. In anticipation of the next election, they want us to protect the services they rely on and plan for the future. They want us to provide stability during times of fundamental change such as this, rather than pulling stunts. This Tory amendment would remove the capacity that this council needs to function properly. They would take away the people and the planning that keep our services steady. That is not responsible or honest budgeting. It is stepping back rather than stepping up from the work residents expect us to do. Preparing for local government reorganisation, safeguarding, policy work, maintaining our parks and green spaces, and everything else we do all comes down to a simple principle. Councils must serve our communities. In particular, LGR will fundamentally affect our communities, how services operate, and how decisions are made. Entering that process without the right staff, the right plans, or the right infrastructure is not a saving. It is a risk that will cost residents more in the long run. And then, after removing all of this preparation and investment, the Tory amendment further proposes a council tax cut and freeze that permanently reduces our income at the very moment LGR is approaching and the pressure is rising. That is a plainly obvious bid for short-term headlines at the expense of long-term stability. It reflects a very different view of what local government is for. On this side, we are working hard to build a council that is capable and ready. Across the other side of the chamber, we'll hear calls for cuts to the very budget lines that allow this council to serve the people we represent. Their approach is to pull back just when residents need their council to be courageous in meeting the challenges to come. Our responsibility, all of us in this chamber, is to ensure North Hertfordshire can meet those challenges and safeguard the people we represent. That requires investment, honesty, and courage. These cuts do not prepare us for the future. They make it harder to meet the challenges ahead. They do not strengthen the council or the communities we serve. They weaken them. Anyone can chase headlines. Leadership is choosing to knuckle down and get to work. No one should support these cuts or this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alistair. I'm sensing an emerging theme. Nigel Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know where to start with this one. Firstly, Ralph, what's with this the party opposite stuff? You've got a blank wall opposite you, which may well be symbolic. I don't know. Perhaps you think that cutting 2 apprentice posts is worth £10 a year of your money. A strange contribution to reducing youth unemployment, I would have thought. Or that cutting the hours of a safeguarding team leader is worth £18 extra a year in the following year. Of course, none of this is about individual posts or specific costs. It is, to be polite, the annual performative exercise from Councillor Munster at budget time. The savings are irrelevant. What counts is the soundbite, the 30-second clip for the show reel. Local Tories call for cuts in council tax. That's it. End. This isn't serious politics. A serious politician doesn't submit budget amendment proposals after 2 o'clock on the day of the budget setting meeting. Deliberately submitted at the last minute in the search of a headline, regardless of the disrespect that shows to the officers who have spent months working on this budget. A serious politician submits alternative proposals weeks or months before. But this isn't about playing with the budget spreadsheet. It's about playing to the gallery again. Whilst I'm sure everyone would like to ideally pay less council tax, what's the real cost of this? £2.5 million, I believe, from our budget over the 3 years. Vote for this amendment and be honest about it. Vote for this and you're actively choosing to remove £2.5 million from our budget. And then own every extra cut, every positive thing we can't do with that money. All for the price of a soundbite in the comment. Oppose this motion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, Sean Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to focus on 3 of the lines included in the amendment on the customer side. Line R8 is around retaining an existing apprentice resource to support our comms team. The work done here both looks at LGR and the external comms there, but it also looks internally at corporate projects such as the increase in filming requests we have in the district, something that brings in an increasing amount of income. Line R9 is a process mapping tool. Now, I know recently at Overview and Scrutiny, there were questions about the prioritisation that the council and officers are having to look at in the light of LGR and what we can do. This particular tool allows officers and will help them in the future in looking at how we do our work, how we can make it better and how we can improve services to our residents. And line R10, the roles within IT that are being crossed out here, they are directly supporting the existing team and also adding to our resilience against cyber attacks. For any councillors who've looked at our risk register, you'll note that cyber attacks sit at the very top alongside resourcing. And this is another change that I think is pretty ill thought out and would increase the risk on both those accounts. So therefore, Chair, for these reasons and all the others that colleagues are raising, I'll be opposing this set of amendments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Next on my list, Councillor Val Bryant.
Thank you. Thank you. Ralph, as you addressed some of these remarks to me, I will take seriously, you said, and I will reply seriously. What is my role in LGR? Well, I must navigate LGR, acting as strategic leader, collaborator, and communicating with 10 other councils in order to transition to a new unitary authority, while maintaining the service continuity of North Herts as it is. I'm responsible for developing and submitting proposals to the government, managing the shadow period. My aim is for us to be part of a new, safe unitary authority on vesting day. I can't decide whether your comments are due to lack of empathy, lack of imagination, or experience. I do appreciate you've always been in opposition and have not had to take responsibilities. And as such, what I'm willing to do, and I'm sure Laura will do the same, is to offer some work shadowing so that you can actually find out what we do and the expertise which it involves. And Chair, could I possibly ask if Laura could then explain her job?
I'll carry on down my list, I think, at the moment. I've got Daniel Allen next.
Thank you, Chair.
You came up as trainee solicitor on my on my board, and it threw me. I'm afraid.
all the many things I've done, that is not one. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what an LGR exec does, because I think we're going to hear, particularly over the next 12 months, it's going to be critical. The LGR is really not just about boundaries. It's really not just about efficiencies. It's a chance to have real influence over power and resources and voices and hearts for decades to come. Val's got a huge job in leading this council during this last couple of years of the existence of North Hearts. We need to keep the trains running at the same time as doing this transformation, and that's where the exec role comes in. It's really nothing like business as usual, and I wanted to make a few points about it. This is transformational, not operational. Every single role, every single service is about to change. I do transformation as a day job, and I'm leading something very similar just now, so it's a great opportunity to bring in those learnings and cross-fertilise the ways that we're looking at this. And I thank colleagues for their confidence in me taking on this unusual role. And I say it's an unusual role because in usual business as usual times, you don't need it. You don't need this forever. But it's not unusual if you look at other authorities that are going through this or who have gone through this. This is not an unusual role. So what it does is it protects the operational. North Hearts Council needs to continue to collect the bins, manage the parking, and hear planning applications until the 31st of March 2028. Separating the transformation from operation is key to achieving both, and it also reflects the officer structure that's going to be in place over the next couple of years. The third point I want to make is it ensures democratic leadership. We in this chamber are going to want to have a voice in what comes after, and so that's another important reason for an extra member. And the fourth point is that this next year is going to be absolutely crucial in that. The reality of this is come May 2027, nobody in this chamber has a right to talk about LGR unless you get elected again. We're all up for election then. The only time that we've got to input to this is in the next 12 months. And so that's what I'm going to be helping with in the next 12 months, is thinking about how we do engagement on that. I've spent the last weekend a training course on this, and we heard from 3 authorities that have gone through this previously, and it was really clear that the pitfalls here and the ways it doesn't go right is when you don't get the change comms right, you don't get the people plan right, and that is both on the officer side and the member side and the resident side. So there is going to be a lot for us all to do. We all need to do a part of this for shaping the plans and for engaging with the residents. And I come back with all sorts of ideas about how we're going to do that. Obviously, the time to do that is when we have the decision, we know what it's going to look like. Then we need to hit the ground running about how we're going to set this thing up and start those trains in motion. So it's the biggest structural change, frankly, that any of us are ever likely to do in any authority. It's going to affect every member, every officer, and crucially every resident.
Laura, can I ask you to wind up, please?
Sorry, yes. Having a dedicated exec ensures leadership and mitigates the risk of the transformation opportunities being lost in the operational that we still have to do. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura, and apologies again for the slight technical hitch. Right, we'll go back and normal service will be resumed. The next speaker is Vijay Puglisingham. Vijay.
Thanks, Chair. I have to say, when the Conservatives let the mask slip, they really don't hold back. If you were a member of staff or a trainee at this authority, I imagine they would be looking at this proposed Conservative amendment with the same concern, dare I say horror, as I am. Once again, though not entirely surprisingly, the Conservatives, amongst other things, are attempting to pull investment away from council staff, apprenticeship programmes, and from safeguarding and safety measures, although belatedly, thankfully, he's decided to withdraw that one, in favour of items that appear designed less to solve problems and more to generate that convenient headline. These proposals would mean fewer opportunities for young people, increased pressure on already hard-working staff, and a weakening of safeguarding capacity. Conservative hypocrisy at its finest, Chair. Spend less now, incur far higher costs later. Apprenticeships are not a luxury line to be trimmed when someone wants a quick press release. They are pathways into employment and skills for local young people. cutting them in pursuit of marginal, short-term savings risks slamming the door on future opportunity. Also, someone can claim they have found efficiencies by next week's leaflet deadline, or indeed tonight's YouTube upload, whichever sooner. Council officers, present and future, are not faceless costs on a spreadsheet. They are the people who step in when our residents and families need support. And what we are seeing here is an attempt at short-term politics, limited real-world benefit, ignoring the long-term consequences. And what is Councillor Munson's proposal? Well, as already alluded to by Councillor Albert, it would mean a Band D property paying somewhere around 265 odd this year. The Labour proposal is to pay 275, a difference of £10 odd, and over 3 years, their proposal would result in a 2.56 million of council tax not being collected. You cannot protect services by quietly hollowing out the workforce that make those services function in the first place, or make North Herts better by pulling investment from communities and infrastructure. And not to mention, as previously, the attempt to remove security provision from key meetings, not all, to ensure safety of councillors, officers and staff. But I am glad Councillor Munson has done the right thing there and withdrawn that element of a proposal. At a time when there are real risks and the political environment is fractious, and we did see last year the unedifying attempt by Conservative councillors to play into that with their motion on sanctuary recognition in hotels, to attempt to turn around and say, it doesn't affect me, so forget everyone else, would have been beyond contempt. There is a difference between responsible challenge and reckless trimming. And while the Conservative amendments may offer sound bites, I, for one, will always choose those long-term opportunities and community investments over the mirage of short-term benefit for long-term costs. Thanks, Chair.
Spot on. Brilliant. Next, Elizabeth Dennis. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair. I feel this is somewhat of a pile-on this evening on Councillor Munson, and I think we all need to apologise for that a little bit. However, Ralph, I will apologise to you first and to colleagues and say I am so sorry for encouraging the opposition to be effective. However, I do wish Councillor Munson you could be a little bit more effective. Let's start with a history lesson, for example. Remind me, which party in this local authority introduced the brown bin tax? I do believe, thank you, Chair, that was the Tories. In terms of financial literacy, though, as Councillor Albert has pointed out, freezing council tax results in a £2.5 million loss for this authority. In terms of rewarding work, one does not reward work and improve our local economy, as Councillor Pupler-Singham has pointed out, by cutting jobs, especially those jobs which create opportunity for young people within this district and also help build the capacity of this authority to deliver the challenges which we face. Planning for local government reorganisation is absolutely what we must do, whether we like it or not, no matter what our personal views are of certain members of the Cabinet, Councillor Munson. And that means that we work with our known knowns. The known known is that local government reorganisation at present is happening. Therefore, we build capacity, we invest in our staff, we invest in the support structures, and we support colleagues in order to deliver the best for residents of this district that we can under the current political landscape. Why is holding reserves important? It's for the rainy day, and it's to facilitate the challenges which we know we are likely to face. That's why those lines are in this budget, and that is why, colleagues, it is reckless for us to consider cutting them. The savings that have been proposed by Councillor Munson aren't really savings. What are they? There's scribbles on the back of a napkin. I shan't use the back of a fag packet, given that it's 2026 and the arguments around tobacco consumption. There's scribbles on the back of a napkin that seem to me to have been only drawn up to facilitate the introduction of a leaflet-grabbing rural enforcement officer for parking restrictions, which, interestingly enough, comes from a councillor who represents a rural area. I wonder why that is the only addition Councillor Munson has put forward, colleagues, this evening, and perhaps he ought to take it to another place, which is currently considering nuisance parking and how to resolve that there. Therefore, colleagues, I respectfully asked everybody if they could kindly consider rejecting Councillor Munson's amendment. Do you keep trying on the effective opposition piece, Ralph? It's a little better this year, but there's still work to do.
Thank you. Next on my list, Councillor Tamsin Thomas. Tamsin.
Thank you, Chair. It probably won't surprise anyone that I'm going to come in defence of R40, the outreach work for the museum storage. Apologies for being predictable. But Ralph, we have over 1 million items that we need to move when it comes to executing on that project. Now, we could pay a removal company to come in and do all the packing and to put everything into the boxes, check what we need to keep, what we need to move. But I suspect that will get very, very expensive and completely unnecessary, given that we know in this chamber alone there are plenty of people who want to come forward and volunteer to do that work. And so an outreach officer is needed to coordinate the volunteers that will be engaged in that process, and the work on that will be starting well ahead of the move. And so I think it would not be a cost-saving measure to get rid of the coordinating support to do that. And it would also lose the opportunity that role will represent to re-engage our school network with the education outreach programme. The school engagement with the collection has still not returned to its pre-COVID levels. I think we all know about the issues that our schools are facing with young people post-COVID and the work that outreach efforts can have in support of that. I also want to defend line R38 for the marketing support. The Town Hall and marketing team have done a great job at drastically increasing their revenue without increasing their costs, increasing the number of events that they have in support of the cost of maintaining what is a heritage building. That marketing support is needed to continue to generate the revenue that they have already proven an ability to do. They can do much more work on that. And on Churchgate, Ralph, you know where we are in that process. You know we're in the viability stage, and you know that we'll be coming back to this chamber with an update on the viability options. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamsin. A couple more to come. Ruth Brown first.
Thank you, Chair. So during the budget workshop process and working collaboratively across the groups, we've had plenty of opportunity to make amendments to the budget. Our group has chosen not to make deletions as proposed by the Tories because we think these services are needed. We therefore largely reject and do not support the Tory amendments. However, R51, the proposal to put additional £9,000 in for an exec for local government reorganisation. I concur with Councillor Williams entirely how important local government reorganisation is. We know it's the biggest change in 50 years, and we need to invest in and this budget invests in staff to support that, as we've heard. And Councillor Williams has said that it's important that leaders are involved. It's a Hearts leaders have been discussing this, and up till now, all of the discussions and submissions, agreements, the proposals around the different options and what's been put forward to government has all gone through the Hearts Leaders Group. And I think that, and our group believes that this local government reorganisation is a leadership function. It lies with the leadership. It should be done with the leadership. Now, we accept that the leader of this council has the right to structure the cabinet as she chooses. We accept that the Constitution allows for 9 cabinet members, and that's up to her. But what we cannot accept is an additional £9,000 in the budget to finance an additional exec member, and we think it should be that should be provided out of existing resources. There is no other council in Hertfordshire that has a cabinet member responsible for LGR. All of them, it's the leader that takes that on because, as we've heard, it is such an important role, and it's going to be particularly important over the next year and a half. So we can't support that. So what I would like to ask for, and with the chair's permission, is that we vote on R51 separately from the other Tory amendments. Thank you.
Well, it's been removed. R51 was removed. Sorry. Next on my list, Daniel Allen. Daniel, good evening.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned alcohol at the start. 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. That's what this amendment offers residents in exchange for the changes that it proposes. Because to fund the reductions, we remove investment in preparing for local government reorganisation, the biggest structural change this council will ever face. It would mean that we'd not retain communications capacity at a time where residents quite rightly expect clarity and transparency. We would not make permanent a key IT developer role, despite increasing cyber risks and the transitions to new systems. We'd remove a climate project apprentice delivering 29 sustainability actions, work that supports warmer homes, cleaner air and long-term savings. We'd reduce safeguarding capacity at a time when expectations and complexity in that area are increasing. And we'd step back from improvements to parks, playgrounds and community assets that residents use every day. So this is the trade-off. For roughly the price of this, 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, we weaken governance, reduce resilience and scale back preparation for the future. Council tax decisions should be responsible, sustainable and honest about their consequences. Ours are. A £10.68 reduction may sound attractive, but the impact of removing this investment will last far longer than my round. I believe residents expect us to plan properly for change, to protect essential capacity and make decisions that stand the test of time. But hey, as long as we're saving enough money for 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, I'm sure the loss of services won't be noticed, will they, Ralph?
Thank you. Paul Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I know Councillor Munsell referred to cuts. I think it's probably a good idea to remind the council about the relevant cuts, and specifically the cuts by the Conservative government since 2015 in the revenue support grant. So nearly £2.1 million of money was reduced to zero, and that's roughly about 10% of our available revenue budget. I think the Conservatives have been responsible for enough cuts to our residents already. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Paul. Oh, I was just going to say I have nobody else, and somebody comes. It's like a last-minute bid in an auction house. Chris Lucas.
Thank you very much, Chair. Wow, Councillor Munsell, it wasn't that long ago when working collaboratively with another party was something that the Conservatives thought was a very good idea. Those years were called the coalition years, Ralph. And if ever there was an advert for how working with a party who will look to undermine you at every single turn, who will use every trick in the book to use you as a human shield, to undermine every effort to try and work on the betterment of the British people, those were the years of that were signally the trademark of working collaboratively. Ralph, in another place, the fact that the Labour and the Greens work collaboratively with the administration of Hertfordshire County Council, some of the members of the Conservative group shouted shame and shameful. Well, £1.2 billion spent with 1.1 million people across Hertfordshire could be anything but shameful. That is what you call setting aside your egos, setting aside the sugar rush of the quick political soundbite and working well on behalf of the people that we represent. You should be ashamed of that amendment, Ralph. Thank you.
Okay, that looks to be the debate done. I will. Councillor Barnard.
Did reserve my rights.
You did, and I was going to see if you wanted to, but you hadn't lit up, David.
So it's very rare that I speak, as you know. In seconding the Conservative amendments so eloquently presented by Ralph, I feel that I speak. Oh, sorry. It's probably not a bad thing. I reserve my right to mumble. So, a little bit following Ralph is a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show. This amendment or these amendments have been researched and costed very carefully. The Conservative budget not only enhances the provision of community facilities, but indeed saves taxpayers money, money which they might be wanting to spend in our ailing town centres. Rural enforcement, essential but understaffed. We need to protect our communities and villages in North Harts. I'm also delighted that Ian confirms that he is from a parallel universe. Sadly, immigrants from his universe seem to have a blinkered outlook on finance and constantly seek to increase costs to the taxpayer without giving widespread and tangible benefits. Nigel, our real and effective budget amendments weren't just written on the back of a fag paper. Oh, did I say fag? I beg your pardon. To Elizabeth. They were discussed with officers before being submitted. Labour budget. Am I speaking or is somebody else interrupting?
Somebody else is interrupting you at the moment, David, because I'm going to hear what they want to say. BJ.
Sorry, Chair, but that comment that was just made by Councillor Barnard about immigrants and immigration, that is outrageous and definitely should be withdrawn. It's beneath anyone in this chamber to be making comments like that.
I think everybody with an ounce of sense will understand that it was Ian who actually mentioned that he was probably an immigrant from a parallel universe, and that was the reference. Well, you can also watch it on YouTube and you'll see that it is. But if it offended anybody, then I obviously apologise. Chair, could I have a little bit of that extra time that was taken?
You can. I'll take your apology for the immigrant.
Nigel, our real and effective budget amendments were discussed with officers before submission. They weren't just written down and put in at the 11th hour. The Labour budget being courageous, as described by Alistair, I think is probably more spendthrift, but effectively it is spendthrift and unwarranted. The Conservative amendments are carefully costed, submitted to the Council to support our residents this year and beyond. And for that reason, I strongly commend the Conservative budget to the Council. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes that. Ralph, having poked the wasp's nest with a stick, would you have a right of reply? No? You don't have a right to reply. No, I'm just reading my notes here. So we go straight to the vote then. So you're voting on the Conservative amendments without 51 and 52. Why did we have here that he had a right of reply?
That motion is lost, Chair.
Lost. Okay, thank you. So yes, we're now back to the original motion, which was duly proposed and seconded. Any further debate? Councillor Amy Allen. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Chair. I was just wondering, is it suitable to possibly call for a short comfort break for a few minutes, or do we need to carry on at this moment?
Well, I was just going to see if there's any great debate on this, and I can see there's quite a few clicking in. So I think quite rightly we could pause.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we should do. 5 to 10 minutes, people, please. We need to crack on.
Sorry. This is yeah. So much. I love. Not I sent it, and I don't.
Well, on a page.
Okay, folks, can you reassemble, please? Okay, quick reminder, if you've lost your place, we are on item 8 now, the recommendations having been proposed and seconded. Debate. Councillor Paul Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind everybody, we're back in the main universe, not the side universe. So clearly the process this year regarding the budget finalisation has been fraught with uncertainty caused by the fair funding review. And I've spoken here before about the difficult position our council could have been in. Now, I welcome the steps that the administration and officers have taken over the last year to consult with the public on further savings options. It's good news that the fair funding review has resulted in a relatively positive outcome for our district, and that's enabled the creation of a medium-term financial strategy that does not have to significantly eat into our reserves in advance of LGR. That's also resulted in the ability, finally, for the budget to accommodate the, wait for it, Royston Learner Pool. Exactly. So after our amendment a year ago that included funding for the pool was voted down, however, it's been good to see the cross-party progress that's now been made on this with the feasibility study and the resulting proposals which are now included. I believe they'll receive strong support and we welcome its inclusion. Beyond this significant point, we've actively engaged in the budget workshops and reviewed the proposals as they've gone through the governance committees prior to here. We spent significant time in our political group reviewing the line items, but we're not going to raise lots of minor issues with the budget for the sake of it. However, we will raise issues where we believe proposals are not the right thing to do for the benefit of our residents or against Liberal Democrat values. We're not challenging the main proposals in the budget that we've seen through the council processes over the last months. They broadly deliver on the overall strategy for the council developed over the last few years. However, we note there were some late changes that were on page 36 added following the cabinet this month, and we've had to take a position on those quickly. On that, I do welcome the active engagement of Councillor Albert in discussing these matters over the last few days constructively with us and listening to our concerns. Of the late additions, I'm sure my colleagues have already raised this and we've covered it in the amendments, but we had two main points. We're concerned about the principle of adding a cabinet post on LGR for the reasons that Ruth has articulated, and we requested more information about the security arrangements as previously asked. And thank you to Councillor Bryant for that response, and we think that's the responsible way to try and deal with a sensitive issue like that. Therefore, we're broadly supportive of the budget overall because it's a responsible and right thing to do for our residents and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tim Johnson. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just firstly congratulate Ralph for joining in so well with Telefairy Tale Day? I'd also just like to address the very welcome learner pool proposal, as Councillor Ward's mentioned, at Royston Leisure Centre. Just a reaffirmation, though, our group weren't trying to cancel the museum project to fund the pool. We proposed reducing the budget for it, which the current administration rejected, then did it later anyway, but we understand. However, I would genuinely like to thank in particular Councillor Albert and Councillor Debenham, actually, for pushing through this proposal. I had conversations with them both, as Councillor Albert referred earlier to, in the last year about the necessity of the project for Royston and surrounding villages, residents. And it is actually terrific to see that this is now coming to fruition. Now, I've got to say, those conversations in this week's Facebook updates were mature, measured and reasonable, in stark contrast to an earlier assertion to me by a member of their administration that the learner pool would never happen in a million years. So that must be a huge surprise now then. Be that as it may, Thank you again to the present administration for now successfully kick-starting this much-needed learner pool. It's very much appreciated, and it's going to be a wonderful new asset for our community.
Thanks very much. Matt Barnes. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. It won't surprise you. I'm also going to talk about the Royston Learner Pool and welcome its inclusion in the budget. I was concerned last year when the amendment that we put forward was defeated. I feared that we'd be kicking the can down the road on this, and it might never happen, despite Councillor Albert describing it at the time as very tempting. But credit where it's due, it's fantastic that this can now go ahead. And I do want to thank Councillor Albert and other members of the council and officers who have helped to keep this alive at various points throughout the last 2 years. It is a lot of money. However, the thing that I hear so often when I'm talking to residents in Royston is that facilities have not kept up with the growth of the town over recent years, that Royston is the forgotten town in North Herts. This is precisely the kind of investment that our town needs, and I'm afraid this is the kind of money that it takes to deliver that. I hope that Cabinet members push for the best value through the tendering and build phase and guard against any unexpected costs. And I trust the colleagues on scrutiny and FAR to make sure that that happens. I also think it's a shame that it couldn't have been done alongside the decarbonisation project as was originally planned, and that centre users in Royston are going to face a second period of disruption. However, that aside, I am absolutely delighted that this project will go ahead. It demonstrates that with some local Liberal Democrat champions pushing for the facilities that we need, even from opposition, we can get this done. It is a fantastic facility for the local community. It will be a fantastic legacy for this council. And I very much hope that it will be completed in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Martin Prescott. Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Barnes was doing really well until his last comments about how it's all down to the Liberal Democrats. I was a completely green new councillor at my very first overview and scrutiny meeting, seemingly nearly 2 years ago, when the learner pool came up. And I picked up on the fact that we needed a learner pool. Swimming is a life skill. Councillor Barnes, who was chairing ONS at the time, agreed. It was supported by Councillor Muncer, Councillor Dennis, and Ian Albert, to his credit, picked up on it and said, yes, that sounds like a good idea. I'm sure they were talking about it before I was elected. And I'm deeply grateful to Councillor Albert for sticking with it and all the other members that supported it. And I just hope that when the inevitable blizzard of Lib Dem literature appears in Royston, that it's not all credited to the Lib Dems and that it was a group effort and we all pulled together and did it. Just before I sign off, Chair, on the 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps item, was I supposed to declare an interest?
Only if you've brought some with you, I think. Thank you for your comments on the learner pool. I'm going to refer you back to Harry Truman's quote. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who takes the credit. Right, Ruth Brown.
Thank you. And yes, Martin, you did raise it. And about the blizzard of leaflets, we have raised it time and time and time again. I think it's fair to take some credit for that. It's been in almost every leaflet for the last 2 years in Royston. So I welcome the collaborative approach, especially from the Cabinet Member for Resources, Councillor Albert. He has facilitated a number of cross-party discussions. I've been involved in a few discussions around the learner pool, and I welcome that. And I thank you very much to the officers as well, who've been worked very hard in the background to keep this on the table. We were so disappointed last year when the learner pool was removed from the capital programme, and as has already been said, it's regrettable that it was not included in the decarbonisation works. For anyone who uses Royston Leisure Centre, it's incredibly disruptive at the moment, but we obviously are looking to the long-term reasons for it, and I absolutely support the decarbonisation scheme. But for users, it has been very disruptive, and particularly for someone like me who's a cyclist, you never quite know which way you're going to be going in and where you can park your bike. So it's been difficult, and we're going to be facing another phase of building. doing. But I'm so glad that the challenge that we made last year to the administration led to the inclusion of the money for the feasibility study. I know there's been some talk about the amount of money we talked about 2 million and now it's 4.75. I think the 2 million was an outline figure, a headline figure. There hadn't been a detailed study. We've now had this detailed feasibility study with a specialist consultant who's done a very, very thorough job, as I understand it from talking to Sarah Kingsley, and therefore and construction costs, everyone knows they're going up. So 4.75 million. The fair funding review, to give credit where credit's due, we've done better than expected. We are able to fund this capital from revenue, and there's going to be a return on investment by 2040. And I want to thank Ian Cooper for being prepared to sanction and sign off this proposal. Absolutely delighted that's been included in the budget, and thanks to everyone for that. Regarding the late additions, I absolutely welcome more money for the Citizens Advice. They do an amazing job, and we've got so many people with complex issues, debt issues, housing issues, legal issues, and the work of Citizens Advice is very much needed, and I really welcome that, as I do the other contributions for the CVS and the Minority Ethnic Forum. We've already talked about the exec member, the additional 9,000. I would like to see that funded out of existing budgets, not an additional budget, and for all the reasons we've already referred to. And as Councillor Williams very eloquently expressed, it is a leadership function. So on that note, I'd just say that with the inclusion of the learner pool, we will be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next one is Vijay Pupalasingham. Vijay.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome and congratulate Councillor Albert and officers on delivering another balanced Labour budget proposal that puts investment back where it belongs, infrastructure and services that residents rely upon and into the communities that we all call home. Now, with this increased allocation for local infrastructure and stronger investment in community provision, it sends a very clear message. North Herts is forward-looking, and this Labour administration is putting communities and residents first. Investment in apprenticeships, generational benefits like the opportunities for children to learn to swim with the learner pool at Royston, homelessness prevention, and ongoing funding to support the brilliant community organisations like we just heard, like Citizens Advice and the North Herts Minority Ethnic Forum. These all indicate where this Labour administration's priorities lie: community first and resident first. And crucially, all parts of our community are getting something from this budget. I feel it would be remiss of me not to highlight that nowhere is this exemplified more than in Great Ashby potentially. Initial funding to support the development of new green space is helping not only the greener part of our manifesto, but also ensuring steps toward a sustainable community asset that will benefit the next generation of residents. And indeed, I also note Councillor Albert's work in his role at County, where he spearheaded the work that has expanded the Herts Links bus provision to Great Ashby. Practical improvements that will make a real difference. And I want to place on record my sincere thanks to Ian for the work and foresight that he has shown in making these things happen alongside the rest of the budget proposal. But this progress, I'd say, Chair, also shines a spotlight on the past. For over 2 decades, Great Ashby residents were represented by councillors from parties from the other side of the chamber who delivered too little change. Now, together with Councillor Williams and other colleagues and our colleagues in this administration, I'm proud that we're helping to turn the page, ensuring places like Great Ashby are finally receiving the attention, active and engaged representation and investment which has too often been denied, correcting years of underrepresentation and delivering the actual fair deal for our communities, the ones that they deserve. And while it's always encouraging to see newfound enthusiasm from councillors opposite, like unfortunately Councillor Jarvis, who's not here this evening, who I understand has attempted to take credit for Great Ashby Canes, I suppose fresh off deciding to take away primary education provision in our villages and closing down the school in Arbury, he was also looking to eat Councillor Albert's lunch. But that aside, residents know that progress comes from sustained work, leadership long before headlines appear. And this Labour budget is more than a set of figures on a budget sheet. It's a statement of intent, investment over decline, delivery over delay, and communities put first. And I'm proud to be supporting it this evening.
Thank you very much. Amy Allen. Amy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is amazing what you could accomplish if you do not care who gets credit. Well, I'm a woman, and historically, we don't tend to get the credit anyway. I'm Councillor Amy Allen, and this leisure centre is in the learner pool is in my portfolio. I'm really pleased with Councillor Albert's budget on behalf of the Labour administration. It includes a proposal to invest 4.7 million in the new learner pool at Royston Leisure Centre, which I've been very proud to be part of recently in working towards this. We were right to take the time to work out if it was 2 million or 4.75 million. That's not a back of a napkin loss. I'm proud that North Herts is in a position to build something new, something that will serve residents for decades to come. I hope this is something we can all support and be proud to deliver together for Royston and the wider district.
Thank you. Next on my list, Mick Debenham. Mick.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Johnson for his acknowledgement of some of the stuff I did. I went to Royston Community Forum and there was a very heated discussion around the pool. And as I said to them then, I want the pool there just as much as they do. And I managed to keep it on the back burner last year. It wasn't dumped completely. And I'm so glad that we've found a good business case for this. And I just, yeah, delighted. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. Daniel Allen. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a moment to say how genuinely proud I am of the investments we're making in our communities this year. I'll continue support for North Herts CVS, for the Minority Ethnic Forum and for Citizens Advice, send a clear message that we value these organisations that work tirelessly behind the scenes to support our residents. They strengthen inclusion and bring people together. These groups are often the first place people turn to in times of need, and backing them is backing the very fabric of North Herts. I'm equally pleased that we're putting more funding into community grants. The investment empowers local groups, volunteers and grassroots projects to make a real difference in their neighbourhoods. Small grants can have a huge impact, and unlocking energy, creativity and civic pride right across our district is exactly what we stand for. And of course, I'm excited about the wonderful investments in Letchworth. I'm looking forward to seeing the feasibility project on Letchworth Grange. That is going to be really exciting. The recreation ground has got such potential there and is used so much, especially for football. I'm also looking forward to the enhancement works on Broadway Gardens. This is an important space for residents where people connect, relax, they build the community together, investing in them and investing in the quality of life. This budget shows that we are working together for a fairer, greener North Herts.
Thanks, Daniel. Donna Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously this budget paper clearly demonstrates that the council remains in robust financial health, and I would like to commend both the director and the executive member for resources for their prudent financial management over the past 2 years. The proposals before us use our reserves sensibly and strategically, funding one-off projects and capital investment without compromising our long-term financial stability. The investments set out here, both revenue and capital, will allow us to strengthen our services, enhance our green spaces, support community well-being and build resilience as we prepare for LGR. This is what responsible politics looks like. Within my own portfolio, I particularly welcome the commitment to providing digital and other improved signage for car parks in Hitchin. This will help to support better distribution of parking across the town and help ease pressure on the busiest central car parks. Residents and the Hitchin bid have repeatedly highlighted the need for clearer, more visible signage, and I'm pleased that we have listened and responded directly to that community feedback. We listen to our residents. Overall, this is a balanced and responsible budget, one that manages our reserves carefully while still creating real opportunities to invest in the facilities and services that improve the daily lives of people across North Hertfordshire. I hope Council will support it.
Thank you, Donna. Alistair Willoughby. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's all very well, actually, that we talk about some of the bigger projects that are being funded by this budget. And I'm sure that there are several members across this chamber who really want to laud that and they want to be able to put that on their leaflet. But I think actually there are some really amazing things that are just smaller lines that actually I think we need to appreciate are massive wins for our communities. One particular one, actually, I just want to throw out there is something like the permanent budget provision for the community wellbeing officer, which had previously been funded through external grants, but now obviously is being brought in-house as those grants are being reduced. But the wellbeing team of the council makes a huge difference across many sectors, many parts of our community with the healthy hubs, etc. And getting those projects done would be impossible without it. And there are so many small parts to this budget that aren't going to be the headlines. They're not going to be the Royston Learner Pool gets funded. That actually I think we should appreciate massively the amount of work that members of our cabinet and other members of and officers have really put the work into getting, actually. And I think that is actually the biggest win of this, is not the headline stuff that you're going to see. It is going to be those small things that make huge differences to our communities, just through the outreach, through the different ways that they help us provide the services, or the way that they make our parks or our green spaces better, and all of those really important things that I think so often get pushed aside for some of the really big, expensive things, which are not the only things that make a huge contribution. So I just wanted to make that point. I'd also just like to say that the only thing that 2 million would have done for the Royston Learner Pool is do a big hole, which I suppose actually the Tories could have buried their heads in. Thank you.
Okay. I have no other requests for the debate, so I will return to Ian Albert for his reply. Ian.
Chair, thank you, and colleagues here will be pleased that I will be fairly brief. I think and thank you for obviously lots of kind words, but I think the important thing here this evening is to see, as I mentioned in my speech, that there's been, beyond, sometimes it's maybe the public don't always see this, but there has been a lot of actually cross-party unanimity on a lot of our key issues and key proposals. And the Royston Learner Pool was one example, but there are a range of others. And I think that is what I certainly sort of take from this evening. So I know that I will always listen to residents, and I'm always happy to reach out to colleagues across the chamber, both in my own party and obviously colleagues in the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats. I think, recognising where we are, recognising where we are as an administration, actually having those discussions, and yes, I really value those discussions with Councillor Ward. I think it's really helpful and enables us to work together effectively. And I've had similar discussions with Councillor Lucas at the County Council. So one of the things I would say to Councillor Muncer here, and I always enjoy sparring with Councillor Muncer, as he well knows. But I think the importance here of saying to you, to Ralph, is actually there was a proposal in your amendments around the rural enforcement officer. I don't know whether that's a good idea or not, but it is precisely the kind of thing that you could have brought to the budget workshops or a finance meeting or whatever, and we would have listened to that idea. It's not about whether you could just claim a credit for whether we've accepted or rejected it at the last minute. Actually, you could well have got that proposal through if you'd come and talk to us. Come and talk to us. And actually, that I really urge and offer you. I tried to reach out. I know you've been away, but we've had several months where you could have actually had those conversations, and my virtual door or whatever is always open for those discussions with any colleague here who's got ideas. And I urge that. I think this budget has, I think, both balanced. It sets a balanced budget. I think there's some really important proposals that we need to take forward, and it will also be important, not when spending that 4.75 million that we've allocated for the Royston Learner Pool, that we will need to critically challenge the costs and to make sure that it's done on time and done within budget. So I really urge colleagues, and I hope all colleagues here this evening will vote to support this budget. Thank you for the kind words, but please let's support that budget and show that we here as a council can actually show that how we can all work together.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, well, we've had recommendations 2.1 to 2.9 have been proposed and duly seconded. Just to say that note that there will be a recorded vote for this item, which the vote will be undertaken in the normal way, but the results for how each member voted will be recorded in the minutes. So we go to the vote.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thanks very much, and thanks for all the work that was put into this. We're going to go to item 9 now, which is the investment strategy 26-27. Paul Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare my usual interest?
Yes.
By my employment, and I'll wait outside.
We'll remember to call you back in.
Thank you.
Okay, this is I think Ian Albert again to present the referral 6B from Cabinet and the report.
Yes, I mean, I can really pick these up together and hopefully reasonably briefly. The investment strategy structure is the same as previous years. Details the assets that the council owns and how we will maintain them. It also details our plans for new assets. Then goes on to determine how we will fund our capital spend, including our approach to borrowing and minimum revenue provision. This, combined with our revenue forecast, gives us our surplus cash that is available for investment. We then determine our approach to investing that cash with a focus on security, liquidity, and yield. The main change to the strategy relates to addressing the motion on the local government pension scheme and responsible investment passed at the council on the 4th of December 2025. Since that meeting, with working with under the leadership of Ian Cooper, and we've had a meeting with our Treasury advisors on how the requirements of that motion could be reasonably addressed whilst not putting the council at risk. Following this, changes have been made to the strategy were outlined in the table at paragraph 8.8 of the report. The main one being focusing our investments with banks to ones with ESG products. There was an exception for Lloyds, that's being practical to change our bank account at this time, and we will need a bank account. But clearly, obviously, whereas we move towards LGR, those discussions about where the new unitary authority banks will be open, and no doubt will be part of the strands of the LGR programme. There was a proposal to increase the amount allowed to be invested in other local authorities to 5 million. This would reflect the low risk nature of these investments, the fewer number of investments through banks available, and an increasing number of authorities seeking a minimum £5 million investment. And again, I hope the council will agree that. And then saying finally, there was a proposal to reduce the period of longer term investments, which was a reflection of the local government reorganisation process, whereby shorter term investments would be more appropriate. So happy to move the paper, Chair. I hope colleagues here will feel that we have, made a really significant step in implementing the motion that was passed in December. That doesn't mean there isn't more to do or more we can do in the future, but I think this is a real step forward, and I commend this paper and I commend our investment strategy to council.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any questions on that? Not seeing anything come up, so Ian has recommended 2.1 and 2.2 and the recommendations under item 9. Can I have a seconder, please? Sean Nolan. Thanks, Sean. Any debate? Dave Winstanley. Dave?
Thanks very much, Chair. I would just like to say thank you for all the work that has gone into producing this investment strategy. I want to acknowledge the prominence of the ESG thread that runs through it from point 7.2 and beyond. We should be extremely proud to have this aspect highlighted and strengthened, whether it's the environmental aspect backing up our climate emergency pledge, or whether it's distancing the council from benefiting from things it really shouldn't be. So thank you to everyone involved. Thank you to Ian Albert, to Ian Cooper, and everyone behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Daniel Wright Mason. Daniel?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate that, thank you for the speed in which this was done. I think as Ian Albert outlined, I think it's a good first step. I think there's more to do, and hopefully with LGR there'll be other conversations, and obviously there's more conversations to be had with the Pension Authority at Herts County Council. But yeah, good first step, and thank you for all the work.
Okay, thanks very much. There are no other requests to speak, so we will go to the vote. We've had a proposal and a seconder on 2.1 and 2.2 under item 9. So please vote now.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thanks very much. Can somebody let Paul back in? We're now on to item 10, the Council Tax Resolution 2627. I think Ian Cooper's presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. Now that we've set our council tax in the item 2 items ago, we have to combine that with the council tax rates that have been set by the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner to sort of formally set the council tax for district for the year 26-27. The format of that is set out in regulations, which is why it looks rather complicated. But in essence, the appendix does detail why each element is included in there, but the regulations state what we have to do, and that is set out in the report. So we'd like you to kind of consider this recommendation to set the budget for the coming year.
Thank you very much. You have recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 as detailed in pages 108 to 113 of the report. Can I have a proposer, Ian Albert?
Move. Happy to move formally, Chair, and reserve the right.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Sean Nolan. Sean, thank you very much. Okay. Any debate? I'm not seeing anybody wishing to debate. Okay, so again, on this one, the council tax resolution, there'll be a recorded vote on this item. So it'll be undertaken in the normal way, but details of how each member voted will be recorded in the minutes. So can I ask you please to vote?
That motion is also carried, Chair.
Thanks very much. Moving swiftly on, item 11, there are no questions submitted by members for this meeting. So we're on to the final item, notice of motions. We've received one motion and notice has been given in accordance with Standing Order 4.8.12. So can I invite Councillor Sadie Billing to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'm proposing this motion because at the end of the day, we are all human. Everyone in North Hertfordshire deserves to feel safe, respected, and able to live as themselves. Recent national developments have created confusion and anxiety. Legal protections remain, but the uncertainty has a real impact on people's sense of safety and belonging. This motion is about reassurance and clarity. It makes it clear that discrimination and hostility have no place here and sets out practical steps to keep our policies and services inclusive. This isn't about party politics, it's about people, our residents, knowing they matter. So I urge all colleagues to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a seconder, please. David Chalmers. David?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's Been moved and seconded. Sure, okay. Any debate on this? Daniel Wright Mason. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion because at its core, it is about showing support to a community that clearly feels under threat. Nationally, the charity Stonewall found that 41% of trans people experienced a hate crime in the last year, and more than half have hidden who they are at work for fear of discrimination. But what matters just as much is what we're hearing locally. Local charity Impactful Lives, who have given input into the development of this motion, interviewed members of the LGBT plus community here in Hertfordshire, including many with disabilities and other vulnerabilities. What they have found was that 73% of respondents said society's attitudes towards trans people had become significantly more negative in the past few years, and 87% said attitudes had become more negative overall. That should give us pause. This motion does not change the law and sadly cannot stop discrimination overnight, but it does send a clear signal that as a council, we recognise those concerns and we support the rights, dignity and safety of all of our residents. And for that reason, I'm happy to support. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Daniel. Claire Winchester. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to see this important motion today, and I want to speak in support on behalf of the many young people this will affect in our district, because this is not an abstract culture war issue. This is a lived experience of hundreds of children and young people that we know personally. I'm proud to count many young trans people and their families as dear friends, and I'll be very proud to see this motion pass to help secure their safety, equality and opportunity as they grow up in our community. My daughter, imminently of voting age, reminded me tonight that her relationship with her trans friends didn't change when their pronouns did, and that her generation sees freedom of personal identity as an important and unquestioned right as a citizen. But that is not to say that trans children have it easy. We've heard something of their experience tonight. And by not speaking out, by not supporting this motion, that means we're ignoring the bullying and abuse that they may be facing. So this motion must pass to ensure there's no return to regressive or exclusionary policies that put our children in fear or at risk of harm. Thank you.
Thank you. David Chalmers. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm honoured to be seconding this hugely important motion this evening and delighted that it has been proposed by Councillor Billing, as this issue, which deals with the basic human rights of members of our community, should be something that unites us all across all party lines. It is a very personal issue for me, for as a gay man born in the 1960s, and when at a time when it was illegal in this country to be me, I've spent most of my adult life campaigning for people like me to have the same rights and opportunities as other members of society. No more, no less. And it's what got me into politics. I've been labelled a paedophile, mentally ill, a threat to society, a danger to children, a second-class citizen. I co-founded the Kaleidoscope Trust to help support LGBT communities across the world. And I guess, whilst acknowledging the need to be ever vigilant, we thought that with same-sex marriage and the repeal of so many discriminatory laws, that as a society we had moved on. However, in recent times, as spelled out in the motion, we see these same attacks and tactics being levelled now against trans people. The hate and scars left on my generation of gay men turn many to alcohol, drugs and even suicide. I have lost too many friends over the years, and now I'm seeing that same diet of fear and shame destroying the lives of trans friends. Some are even contemplating leaving this country and killing themselves. Once again, we see a whole section of our community, the trans and non-binary, demonised and accused of being a threat to society because of the bad actions of a few. Denying trans and non-binary people the right to exist and preventing them from going about their daily lives as who they are is a denial of their basic human rights. It takes huge bravery to come out as trans, and we are forcing people back into the closet. And if we think this is happening somewhere else, let me tell you about Susan, a trans woman in her 60s who has been frequenting her local pub in Hitchin for many years, using the women's toilet, until last summer, when she was told now she has to use the men's. Just think what that means. Every time you go out, you live with the threat of being exposed as a trans person, something you spend your life trying to avoid. And according to Impactful Lives, a local LGBT charity, 86% of LGBT surveyed in Hearts stated they had experienced an increase in hostility or hate speech. Adding to the confusion and hostility, we have Hearts Police deciding no longer to participate in Pride events, And just think what that means for the trust in the police. Right now, more than ever, the LGBT community, and in particular trans residents, need to see that our councils, the police, and the statutory bodies of this county and this country are on their side. By passing this motion this evening, we send a signal that as leaders of our community in North Herts, we stand alongside other councils in the county in reaffirming our support for the rights of our trans and non-binary residents. Please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Daniel Allen. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. I support this cross-party motion because supporting our trans community is not optional. It's a matter of basic respect, dignity, and equality. Recently, I wrote to the local paper, The Comet, after deeply offensive and homophobic comments were left unchallenged on their Facebook page. When prejudice is allowed to sit in plain sight, it sends a message, and that message is that discrimination is tolerated. It's not. Our towns, Hitchin, Letchworth, Royston and Baldock, and our villages are diverse, welcoming places. Trans people are our neighbours, our colleagues, our friends, and our family. They deserve to feel safe, valued, and respected in their own community. Freedom of expression does not mean freedom to dehumanise others. Words have consequences. When hateful language is left unchecked, it causes real harm. As councillors, we have a responsibility to stand up clearly and publicly against discrimination in all its forms, including transphobia. This motion sends a simple but powerful message, and I look forward to sharing this when I DJ at the North Herts Pride Night in 2 weeks' time. This motion says that we stand with all our community. We stand for inclusion, and we stand for dignity for everyone.
Thanks, Dan. Tom Tyson. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just briefly, I'm going to show my age a bit now, but I was a very young teacher in 1988 when the dreadful Thatcher government introduced a terrible piece of repressive legislation, which became known as Section 28. And the purpose of that was to make it illegal for councils to promote homosexuality in a positive light, to use the language of the day. So and that had obviously got ramifications for all of us working in local authorities around the country. And I think that as a result of that, I am particularly proud to be involved in the council motion today, just to say a few words about how far we've come since those times, but also a word of caution, because I think this comes at a time when there are dark clouds on the horizon in terms of people's tolerance and acceptance of people who are perceived to be other than themselves. And I say dark clouds, I might also add to that there are some turquoise clouds on the horizon in certain places as well. And so I urge everyone to vote with this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom, very much. Alistair Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to keep it very brief. There's a quote that's from a TV show, but I think it is incredibly apt for this. Every time someone steps up and says who they are, the world becomes a better, more interesting place. Supporting this motion allows us to support more people to step up and show who they are and make the world a better, more interesting place. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. Ralph Munster. Ralph.
Thank you, Chairman. And could I just preface my comments by thanking all of those colleagues who have shared their thoughts and their views and their experiences tonight, because I think it is important that those are heard and that those concerns are actioned. The Scottish minister's case at the Supreme Court makes a very interesting reading, and the Supreme Court justices got it right. They determined that biological sex is sex. They determined that if you are born with male genitalia, you are a male. If you are born with female genitalia, you are a female. But what this judgment does not do is it does not weaken the legal protections for the trans community, nor does it weaken the legal protections for the LGBT community either. And I think that is an important point, because we have to be careful in what we seek to do to ensure that, yes, we encourage applications for jobs from a variety of different communities, but equally that we are not discriminating against communities of whom we are not actively seeking to encourage. And my principal concern is for women's rights, because women's rights have been hard fought over many, many years. And I find it somewhat hypocritical that an administration who seeks to ensure that the protection of women and girls is very much at the forefront of this policy, is content with allowing biological males to go into changing rooms, to go into toilets that biological females and young girls frequent. And I'm very, very concerned about that matter.
Thank you. Elizabeth Dennis. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair. I think the pace at which Councillor Munster spoke underlines how difficult and challenging a subject area this is. And I don't think that he means anything negative or disrespectful by the things that he has said. However, I would draw the council's attention to the judgment that was referred to. It wasn't the court that made the law, because of course the court merely interprets the law. The legislation that determines that biological sex is how we view the definition of a man and the definition of a woman dates back a number of decades, and it was merely the court's interpretation of that legislation and a tacit instruction to Parliament that should we now be in a position where we wish to acknowledge trans rights and the existence of trans people in the gender that they wish to be determined by, it is for Parliament to change the legislation, not for the court effectively to make law. However, I think it would be remiss of us in this month in particular, given it is LGBTQIA plus History Month, to neglect and to not address the challenge and struggles that trans people have faced. This motion is positive. I don't think that by acknowledging and supporting trans people, we are denigrating or putting back the protections and rights of other groups and other protected characteristics. I think the argument that women's rights suffer where we support trans people is, to be quite frank, speaking as a woman, an absolute nonsense. And in fact, it has been proven and established by a number of academic studies, as well as anecdotal accounts, that when we fail to acknowledge and support gay rights, lesbian rights, trans rights, we also fail to acknowledge women's rights. And by treating trans people with prejudice or less equally, we also set back the rights and progressions of all women. So, colleagues, I highly commend this particular motion. I think that it is in line and in keeping with the ethos of this council, and it will help support and protect all people across this district. Pride has and always will be a protest. It is a political movement. And I think that it is right that this council proudly champions the rights of the LGBT plus community, which is what this motion that has been brought cross-party intends to do, and will support every member by breaking down barriers. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And I hope that we can start to see more positive, diverse representation across this space.
Thank you very much. Oh, I was just going to say there isn't any more, but no, there is. Tamsin Thomas. Tamsin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Ralph's comments at the end there reminded me of attending a women's safety event that this authority held in Hitchin, which was well attended with over 100 women who had a very vibrant discussion about what they perceive as fears. And this was at a time when the trans debate was live, and the trans issue of trans women in bathrooms did not come up, but from a single person in that room. And I really I'm actually finding it hard to speak. Furious, Ralph, that you would raise that, as I don't think any of the women, certainly on this side of the chamber, would have any fear of that type. And I think the women in our district did voice what their fears were at that event. And it just didn't come up. It wasn't in their mind. It's a manufactured fear, and it shouldn't be influencing what we do here.
Okay, thank you. Joe Graziano. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. Am I on? Is that
I
on?
don't know, mate.
Is it not? Am I on? Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really good motion, but we shouldn't be discussing this really in an idealistic world. We are all human, and we should all be given the respect to one another. We shouldn't be having to talk about black lives, gay lives, whatever lives. We should be in this world where we shouldn't have to keep pressing for people's rights. One of my best mates was a man and transitioned, and the amount of stick that they got for that. So I totally accept and get that. But she hasn't transitioned because I keep getting her pronouns wrong, and I get in trouble over that sometimes. So I'm learning, and I think we're all learning through this process. So whilst I support this, I also think in an idealistic world, we should be to a point that we shouldn't be discussing this at all, or everybody is respected for who they are. End of.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that. Right, I'm going to go back to Sadie for a wrap up.
I'll keep this quite brief because I think most people were in support of this. I just want to add that supporting trans residents does not weaken women's rights. The law protects both. This motion simply affirms dignity, safety, and respect for everyone.
Caught me on the hop there, sorry. Right, that's it. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to a vote on this. So all those in favour of this motion, please vote.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes our business on this budget evening. So thank you all for your attention. And my thanks to Ian Albert for his presentation. We next meet for what will be my final. I know. I was just getting into it. It's on Thursday, the 23rd of April, which I don't need to remind you, I'm sure, is Shakespeare's birthday. So I expect to hear one or two very relevant quotes from Shakespeare in your contributions on that evening. Perhaps I'll give a prize for the best one. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good weekend.